Flying after 60 feels harder than it should, right? The long walks, the crowded terminals, the surprise fees that seem to appear out of nowhere. What used to feel exciting now feels exhausting before you even reach the gate. And most people assume that's just part of getting older. More waiting, more stress, more money spent just to stay comfortable. But here's what almost no one tells you. Your age isn't the problem. It's actually an advantage. Quietly, behind the scenes, airports and airlines have built-in special accommodations for older travelers. Not as favors, not as charity, but as official options. The catch? They almost never advertise them, because every time a senior uses one of these perks, the airline loses time, money, or control of the boarding process. So instead, they stay silent and hope you power through like everyone else. And that silence works. Most seniors never ask. They assume the rules are the same for everyone, and that's exactly what airlines are counting on. But once you know what to say, who to ask, and when to ask, flying changes fast. Starting with the first perk, one that doesn't require you to be injured, disabled, or unable to walk, yet it can completely transform how you move through the airport. If you want more travel tips like this that actually make flying easier as you get older, consider subscribing. This channel is built for smarter, stress-free travel. Here's the first perk that, honestly, completely changes the game, and it's one most people really misunderstand. Free wheelchair and mobility assistance isn't just for travelers who can't walk. You don't have to be injured, you don't have to be disabled, and you definitely don't have to be confined to a wheelchair. If you're over 60 and deal with tired legs, stiff joints, balance issues, those long terminal walks, heavy carry-on bags, or just crowded airports that drain your energy, you qualify. Airlines don't go out of their way to explain this because, well, every request costs them money. They have to assign staff, coordinate escorts, and move you through the airport ahead of the normal flow. From their perspective, it slows everything down, so they stay quiet and let travelers struggle through on their own. But here's the part that really matters. In the United States, mobility assistance is federally required. If you request it, airlines cannot legally refuse. You can even ask for ambulatory assistance, which basically means you can walk but need help with distance or pace. And the benefits go far beyond just a chair. You get a personal escort through the terminal, help navigating security, early boarding before most passengers, assistance with your bags, and help reaching your seat. And that early access quietly unlocks another perk most people miss. This next perk surprises a lot of people, because most travelers assume there's only one way to get easier screening, and that's paying for TSA PreCheck. But for older passengers, there's a quiet exception many never hear about. If you're 75 or older, TSA often provides modified screening automatically. No application, no background check, no interview, no fee. In many airports, that means you can keep your shoes on, leave light jackets in place, and move through security with fewer steps than the standard line. You may still use the regular metal detector, but the process is usually simpler and faster. Here's the part they don't advertise. TSA officers have discretion, and when an older traveler is moving slower or receiving mobility assistance, officers will often guide them through a more streamlined process when possible. It's not something you demand, it's something you mention politely. Why does this exist? Because from TSA's perspective, senior travelers are generally lower risk and slower to process in crowded lines. Streamlining their screening actually improves efficiency for everyone. Now, to be clear, this isn't guaranteed at every airport or every checkpoint. It depends on staffing, traffic, and the officer you encounter. But it's applied far more often than people realize. Saving time is nice, but saving money hits harder. Most people believe senior airfare discounts disappeared years ago. In reality, they never went away. They were just buried. Many major airlines still offer reduced fares for older passengers, but you'll almost never see them online. Search the website, try different dates, use incognito mode, it won't matter. These prices are often hidden from online booking systems on purpose. Here's the loophole. Senior fares are frequently phone-only and limited to specific routes or inventory that isn't publicly displayed. Airlines do this because of yield management. Simply put, they want to sell as many full-price tickets as possible before offering discounts that lower their average fare. If everyone saw senior pricing online, fewer people would pay full price. That's why language matters. When you call, asking for the "Do you have any senior discounts?" often gets a quick no. But asking to book a senior fare for a passenger over 60 triggers the agent to check a different set of options. It's not guaranteed, but it opens doors most callers never reach. Sometimes the savings are modest. Other times, they're significant, especially on less popular routes or midweek flights. And here's the interesting part. Even when seniors don't get a discounted ticket, they still qualify for certain boarding advantages that people pay extra for. But even without discounts, seniors still board earlier than people who paid extra. And if you're planning a trip soon, I've put links in the description where you can compare flights and senior-friendly hotels without jumping between a dozen sites. This is where, honestly, a lot of seniors miss out, because airlines use confusing language that makes people think they're asking for something special, when really, they're not. Priority boarding and pre-boarding aren't the same thing. Priority boarding is usually sold as a paid perk tied to status or credit cards. Pre-boarding, on the other hand, is actually designed for passengers who need extra time getting down the jet bridge or into their seats. And mobility needs don't automatically mean you need a wheelchair. If you're over 60 and boarding feels stressful, slow, or physically uncomfortable, you're allowed to request extra time. No medical paperwork, no doctor's note, no explanations beyond what you're comfortable sharing. You're not asking for an upgrade, you're asking for accommodation. In real life, that often places seniors right after families with small children and before those big boarding groups are called. Gate agents don't announce this loudly because, it would clog the process. Instead, they quietly help when someone asks, and that's where psychology really matters. Gate agents deal with rushed, demanding passengers all day. A calm, polite senior who asks for extra time due to mobility or comfort concerns is far more likely to be accommodated than someone arguing about their boarding group. Getting on earlier solves one problem. Seating solves another. This perk works best when you understand one simple rule: never ask for an upgrade. Airlines train their staff to shut down upgrade requests fast. But seat comfort adjustments are a completely different conversation. For older travelers, comfort isn't a luxury, it's a legitimate need. Circulation issues, stiff joints, back discomfort, or easier access to the restroom are all reasonable concerns, and honestly, they matter more as we age. That's why seniors are often treated differently than younger passengers, making the same request. A 25-year-old asking for more legroom sounds like preference. A 65-year-old mentioning discomfort or mobility concerns sounds like accommodation. And airlines are far more willing to help when the request is framed that way. By the way, if comfort matters to you beyond the plane, I've linked a few senior-friendly hotels and tours in the description that focus on walkability and easy access. Timing also matters. The best moment to ask is during check-in or at the gate, before boarding starts and before seats are locked in. Gate agents still have flexibility then. Once the plane is full and boarding is underway, options shrink fast. Now, to be clear, this isn't guaranteed. If the flight is completely full, there may be nothing available. But when there's room, seniors are often quietly moved to aisle seats, bulkhead rows, or extra legroom sections without paying a cent. And if you hate baggage fees, this next one really matters. Airlines make billions from baggage fees, which is exactly why they don't advertise the ways some seniors can avoid them entirely. If you're a senior and a military veteran, benefits often stack. Many airlines waive checked bag fees for veterans, and that perk doesn't disappear with age. As long as your veteran status is attached to your frequent flyer profile or mentioned during booking, those fees can vanish quietly. Medical necessity is another area most travelers misunderstand. Medical devices and supplies are allowed to fly free, and the definition is broader than people think. CPAP machines, medication cooling bags, mobility aids, and health-related equipment don't count against your baggage allowance. In some cases, when items are clearly tied to medical needs, agents will waive fees without argument. There are also situations where companion bags are included, especially when a senior is traveling with assistance or medical items. It's not universal, but it happens more often than airlines admit. The key is how you ask. Don't argue fees. Don't demand exceptions. Simply explain that you're traveling with medical or assistance-related items and ask what accommodations apply. Airlines rarely push back on medical necessity. The liability just isn't worth it. And that brings us to the most sensitive perk of all. This is, honestly, one of the most closely guarded perks, and it's also the one people just assume is impossible without first-class tickets or premium credit cards. But in certain situations, seniors can actually gain lounge access without either of those things. The key angle here is medical accommodation. Older travelers who need a quiet place to rest, manage medication, or recover during those long layovers can sometimes be offered lounge access as a courtesy. This isn't something you'll see advertised on a sign, though. It usually happens through a quiet conversation with lounge staff or airline customer service. Delays and cancellations create another opening. When flights are disrupted, airlines are looking for ways to reduce crowding and complaints. Seniors who mention mobility or health considerations are often given meal vouchers, seating assistance, or in some cases, lounge passes before younger travelers are even considered. Veteran-related programs add another layer. Many senior veterans actually qualify for benefits that include complimentary or discounted lounge access, even if they've never used those perks before. Most travelers never think to ask. And the wording really matters. Don't ask for lounge access. Instead, ask what options are available during a long wait or delay due to medical or comfort needs. And it's important to be clear, this is discretionary, not guaranteed, but the perks don't stop once you're past security. This perk rarely shows up in airline policies, but it shows up in real life more often than people expect. When travel plans change because of delays, exhaustion, or tight connections, seniors are often given more flexibility than younger passengers. Not because there's some written rule, but because airlines are allowed to make accommodations when age and comfort are factors. That word really matters. Airlines don't call this a policy. They call it accommodation. An accommodation gives staff wide discretion. Gate agents and customer service reps can rebook flights, waive change fees, or adjust itineraries when they believe a traveler needs extra consideration. How you explain the situation makes all the difference. Instead of focusing on frustration, focus on impact. Mention fatigue from long travel days, difficulty navigating rushed connections, or concerns about physical strain. Keep it calm and reasonable. You're not asking for special treatment. You're explaining why flexibility would really help. Staff members are trained to reduce risk and avoid escalation. A senior who's clearly struggling is far more likely to receive leniency than a traveler demanding strict rules be bent. And if something goes wrong mid-trip, this next perk becomes even more important. When flights are delayed or canceled, the airport quickly turns into chaos. Lines grow, tempers rise. And honestly, most passengers are treated exactly the same, except seniors. Older travelers are often prioritized quietly when disruptions happen. Not announced, not guaranteed, but, frequently applied. Airlines know that long waits, overnight delays, and rushed rerouting create more risk for senior passengers, both physically and legally. That's why staff are trained to resolve these situations faster when age and mobility are factors. This can mean earlier rebooking, meal vouchers, hotel accommodations, or help finding alternative routes while others are still waiting in line. It doesn't happen because someone demanded it. It happens because the situation was framed correctly. The mistake many people make is arguing about fairness. That shuts conversations down. The better approach is simply asking what options are available given your age, comfort, or mobility concerns. That language signals accommodation, not entitlement. From the airline's perspective, this is about liability and optics. A stranded senior traveler draws far more attention and potential consequences than a younger passenger scrolling on their phone. And here's the most important part. There's one sentence that unlocks almost all of this. This final perk isn't a benefit you apply for or a box you check. It's a sentence. And when it's used correctly, it quietly opens the door to many of the perks you've heard so far. Here's the sentence. I'm over 60 and traveling today, and I wanted to ask what accommodations might be available for comfort or mobility. That's it. No demands, no complaints, no long explanations. Psychologically, this works because it does three things at once. It establishes age, which signals legitimate accommodation. It uses the airline's own language, accommodations, instead of personal requests. And it focuses on comfort and mobility, not entitlement or upgrades. Now compare that to the wrong approach. Phrases like, I deserve, I always get, or comfort. You have to instantly trigger resistance. Staff hear entitlement and shut down. But a calm, respectful question invites problem solving. And that's the shift seniors need to understand. You're not asking for favors. You're not gaming the system. These accommodations exist because airlines and airports recognize that travel impacts older passengers differently. Once you frame the conversation the right way, staff often look for ways to help, sometimes in ways you didn't even know to ask for. Airlines win when seniors stay quiet. When travelers assume the rules are the same for everyone, they pay more, wait longer, and endure more stress than they need to. And that silence is exactly what keeps these perks hidden. But none of what you've learned is a shady loophole. These are a mix of passenger rights and staff discretion, designed to make travel safer and more manageable as we age. The problem isn't that these options don't exist, it's that most people are never told they can ask. Once you understand that, the balance shifts. You stop powering through discomfort, you stop overpaying just to feel okay, and you start traveling with more control and confidence. If you travel a few times a year and want every trip to feel easier, subscribing keeps these tips in your pocket when you need them most. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been offered one of these accommodations? Or maybe you were denied and didn't know why. Share your experience in the comments. Your story helps other seniors know what to expect. If this video helped you see air travel differently, consider liking it so more older travelers find this information. Travel smarter, stay confident, and take every flight on your terms. If you'd like more tips for stress-free flying after 60, go ahead and subscribe. And if you found this helpful, like and share to help other seniors travel with more confidence and ease.